You know, it's me again. Part 2 of my video. Especially, well, of course, this really isn't going to air on my cross country. Well, it'll air on my YouTube channel, but I won't put it on the cross country page. But for those of you that are friends with me on Facebook, you probably recognize this very well by now. This is Junior's urn. I actually still remember the night that Steph and I went to Hobby Lobby and picked out his urn. It's gotten a little bit of age on it, but of course it's still very precious to us, as it always will be. But the pregnancy that would ultimately end with this. It was a few months after, it was barely a couple of months after I got off from Job Corps. I graduated, and actually a few months before graduation, Steph and I were starting to get pretty serious, and I knew that ultimately I was not going to be, I was in Job Corps in Utah, by the way. I knew ultimately I wasn't going to be staying in Utah. I was pursuing an aircraft dispatch job, and I knew I'd either go to where my new job would take me, or I'd wind up going back home to Colorado. And Steph and I were talking about this, and I told her, you know, if you really are serious about me and stuff, I don't mind bringing you home to Colorado, but only if you're really in this, you know, only if you're into me for the long haul. And of course, obviously, she said yes. And we both wound up coming back home to Colorado at the first part of June of 2010. And I wound up getting hired on at Walmart just a little under a month later. I think it was about 3 weeks, and I was hired into Walmart. I remember coming home one day. It was only a couple of weeks after I got hired into Walmart. This was the beginning of July by now. I remember coming home one day, and at the time we were living with my mom and her then boyfriend. And I barely get in the door. And I think it was, I just got off of a 6-hour daytime shift. And Mom was like, sit down, we need to talk. And of course, as many of you know, when your mother tells you that sit down, you need to talk, it usually means there's not going to be a whole lot of talking. It usually means, shut up and listen to what the heck you've been doing wrong for the last 2 weeks. Anyway. So, of course, I sit down, and I'm wondering, okay, what the heck did I do? And I forget exactly what happened, how it was said, or what was said, but they ultimately ended up showing me Steph's pregnancy test, which said she was positive. And of course I did a little, I'm gonna be a daddy dance, because I was excited. I mean, at that time it's been a little while since the miscarriage, and I was thinking it was safe to try again. Because honestly, I'm a family man. I've always wanted a family, and we're still both very hopeful to one day have a family. So of course we were excited. At the time, we were still in the process of getting Steph's Medicaid switched over from Utah to Colorado, so she doesn't have a doctor yet. But there was a nice little, I'm not sure what you all would call it, like a pregnancy clinic or something like that. But it was named Choices, and we decided to sign up and go through them. And one of the things they do is help to get you into an initial ultrasound. Pretty much, I believe, like a nurse practitioner does it. And it's just like a general overview. They let you see the baby, check heartbeat, things like that. But it's not, they really can't go into a whole lot of detail like do diagnostics or anything. So, and we still remember this, it was really our first ultrasound together. Well, honestly, my first ultrasound involving a baby, period. But, you know, it was just exciting because we got to see them, and at the time, we didn't realize it then, we weren't sure how far along pregnancy was, but they were guesstimating, I think, 7 weeks. I think they were off a week, and we found out they were 8 weeks, and we remember, well, of course, the big thing that we saw first there were, in fact, 2 babies. And they were just so cute. They looked like little teeny tiny teddy bears inside. I mean, they practically looked like gummy bears. I mean, those of you on my Facebook probably have seen the pictures. They just looked like gummy bears in these sacks. It was just so cute. And just one of the things that will always be near and dear to us is every time that, we go to the ultrasound, we always hear their heartbeats. And we got to hear both of theirs individually. And it was just so cool, because we basically knew we had confirmed twins. But the one thing that the doctors really can't say or anything like that is we still both remember seeing, it didn't show up on any of the pictures, nothing to it, but we still remember seeing, it looked like a third sac, but it could have been a third sac, could have been another part of Steph's reproductive system, but to us it looked like a third sac, and we questioned it. We said that looks like a third sac, and I think the discussion went, it does, but there's obviously no, they refer to it as a fetus, there's obviously no fetus. So either a sac was created but the baby never made it to the sac, or the baby died very early and basically got reabsorbed back into the body. Now, Steph's got a very strong mother's intuition, and I really have to backtrack a little bit. As soon as we found out she was pregnant, she felt like, at the very least, she was having twins. And mind you, this was before the ultrasound. And there was a couple of days she even thought she might have triplets, but she knew for sure she was having twins. And lo and behold, we find out she's having twins at 8 weeks. So, but, like I said, we saw this third sac. We were kind of sad, and we still, in theory, believe that it was a baby. It's just it died very, very early. Probably within the first few weeks. Because by the time we got to the ultrasound, there was no evidence beyond the sac. And even the sac was kind of hidden away, so. But we got that done. We were excited. We're like, yes, we're having twins. That's just great. Parenthood's going to be great. All this and that. It was just, But, and for the most part, the first half of the pregnancy was pretty good. The only time we really had a stare was, I remember, of course Steph does too, one night she was having really bad pains in her belly. And she said the pain felt like right down where her uterus was. Which, of course, this alarmed me and our then roommate, because Mom had moved out by this time. They broke up. But, so we decided to run Steph to the ER just to make sure everything was okay. And the hospital, we were up in Woodland Park, and the hospital up there didn't really have all the fancy ultrasound equipment, things like that. It was just a smaller regional hospital. But they did at least have a little fetal heart monitor to help verify, that everything was okay. So, what it turned out to be was, they speculated it was, I think, indigestion, or something along that line that was causing her so much pain. And they did a heartbeat, but they could only find one distinctive heartbeat besides Steph's. And we're like, well, we're having twins, so... But they couldn't find the other heartbeat, so they said, well, maybe the other one's hiding, because I guess the way they explained it, sometimes the second baby will turn to where the sound of the heartbeat won't be picked up on the fetal heart monitor. So we're like, alright, we got a doctor's appointment coming up again soon anyway, things should be great. So we got to go to Steph's first doctor's appointment. Actually, the way it was, you have an ultrasound appointment and then a doctor's appointment. So we go to the ultrasound appointment, and by then we were at week 14. So they go up, and mind you, this was her first pregnancy. So we're looking at the screen, and as it would turn out, we're looking at Junior. And he's obviously by now no longer a teddy bear. Again, we're at 14 weeks. He's not moving much, only every so often, because as most of you know, at 14 weeks, a baby really can't move much on their own. They really only move in reaction to something bumping them. It's more of a reflex, I guess. So, of course, we're excited. We're seeing our baby here at 14 weeks. But then, of course, the questions come along. Where's the twin? And the ultrasound tech says, there is no twin. I don't see a twin. And stuff like that. So, and we kept insisting there was a twin, there was a twin. And she said, I'm sorry, I can't see the twin. So, it kind of concerned us. I mean, again, we were very happy to see Junior, but we were also a little concerned because we weren't seeing the twin. Which at the time, Steph's intuitions were telling her that one was a boy, one was a girl. So, I'm not sure if how we decided that, or how we knew that Junior was the other one. But we figured one was a boy, one was a girl. The boy would take my name with the Junior suffix, and the girl would be Catherine Angela Rocha. So, but we couldn't find the tech couldn't find the other twin, the twin. And we had a doc appointment about a week later, and unfortunately, he says, with you guys doing the first ultrasound at the clinic and not here, we really don't have a whole lot of information about the twin. He said, and we found out, he said, while there is sometimes a chance that the twin can hide, at 14 weeks it's very hard for it to do so. So the speculation was that the twin had passed away inside of Steph and had been reabsorbed into the body. We were kind of in denial about it. I mean, we were upset because we couldn't see our twin. But we were kind of, I guess, in a way, because there was just enough missing information for us to wonder if maybe the twin was hiding, maybe it was too low, too high, something like that. So we really couldn't mourn yet over the loss of the twin because we just felt like the twin was still there. But by 20 weeks, when we did the 20-week ultrasound, the tech said there's no way the twin can hide at 20 weeks. She'd stick out. So by 20 weeks we knew. Unfortunately, yes, the twin had passed away, and it was just Junior. So we were both really heartbroken for the twin, but at the same time we were excited for Junior because she was still doing okay. Up until about 20 weeks. I remember the 20-week ultrasound, and they couldn't determine, if I remember right, they couldn't determine Junior's sex. For whatever reason, I'm not sure if it was just the way he was turned or something like that. They just couldn't determine the sex at that time. But they said everything else looked fine for the most part. But then we come back to see the doc about a week later, and he said there were two things that were bugging him about the last ultrasound. He said the amniotic fluid level was low within the amniotic sac, and also that Junior's heart appeared like it was off axis. And of course, us being newbie parents were like, well, what does that mean? And I guess he said he didn't have enough information, so he scheduled us to go see a specialist to do a specialist ultrasound at 21 weeks. And we said, alright, we can go ahead and do that. That 21-week ultrasound is something I'll never forget. It was another normal day. We drove down. They did step under the table. The ultrasounds always excited us. So at first we were excited, and I guess this tech was good because almost right away they found Junior. But I still remember it because I was kind of getting used to how they ran the ultrasound lab, and I guess one of the first things they do is I'm not sure if it's a temperature map or a thermal map, but I guess the colors to me would indicate temperature, and usually like the body and the umbilical cord would usually be indicating like red, orange, a brighter color. Well, when the screen came up for Junior, everything was blue. And the nurse doing the scan stopped almost right away and said, "I'll be right back." We never had this happen with any of our previous ultrasounds, so again, with this being our first time experiencing this problem, we really weren't sure what to think. We were nervous because we're like, why would you stop the ultrasound less than a minute into it? But she comes back and brings the doctor. It wasn't our doctor. I think it was one of the higher up doctors for the ultrasound lab. And they're looking at Junior on the screen. And to me, it just looked like he was resting, because again, he wasn't supposed to be moving, or at least I didn't think. He just looked like he was sleeping. So again, it dawned on me. I'm not sure if it dawned on Steph, but what we were looking at was Junior no longer Junior. And the doc said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but, you know, your baby has passed away." And Steph immediately started crying, and I'm standing there in shock. I'm like, well, how can you tell? And of course he went to explain that I guess the color map was one thing, but also there was no heartbeat being registered on the ultrasound machine. And they took a closer look, because I guess the way Junior was laying, you could see his heart, which I still never figured out how they can see the baby's heart through all of his other organs. But his heart wasn't beating. You could see the chambers, but there was no movement of the chambers. And, you know, it's something that I'll never forget. You know, Junior just looked like he was sleeping. He wasn't moving, he just looked like he was sleeping, but you knew that he was no longer alive, and that baby that we've been carrying for up to 20 weeks was now, in fact, you know, in the physical sense he was there, but in every other sense he was passed away. It was hard, and we didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to do or what was going to happen. But they said, "You're going to have to go over to the birthing center." Because I had, at the time, like I said, I was so new to this. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how they did this. They just said, "You're going to have to go over to the birthing center." Or the birth center, I should say. So we did. And once we got over there and stuff, you know, Steph was an emotional wreck, and we didn't go over right away. We went out to, we were driving the S10 at the time. We went back out to the truck. Because the way the hospital was, I mean, if any of you are familiar with the hospital, Penrose North, then basically the doctor's office is on one side of the parking lot, and the hospital is right over on the other side. So we went out to the truck. And we're in the truck, and we call our immediate family members. I think I called my dad, my mom. Actually, I think we went and saw my mom. I can't remember. No, actually, I think we just called her and left a voicemail. But we called my dad, my mom, my grandma. I think Steph called her grandma and her mom. And we just pretty much let our immediate family members know that things are not okay, the baby passed away, and we're going to be in the birth center. So we get over there, and the nurses over there took such great care of us. I mean, well, both times that we had to do this, they did. But they explained to us what was going to happen, and with the fact that Steph would have to actually go ahead and deliver Junior as if it was a normal delivery, but of course he wouldn't be alive. So I was honestly apprehensive. I'm like, our first delivery, we haven't even done any Lamaze classes or anything like that. I wonder how this is going to go. And just at first it was, because we got over to the birth center about 11:30 that day, and this was November 5th. We were over there about 11:30. I think by about noon or so they had Steph set up on the pills. I forget the pill they used, but it was the pill that they introduced into the cervix to start getting it to relax and dilate. I think it was one step short of actually inducing labor. They just wanted to kind of relax the cervix and see if that would kick the body into labor. Because at the time we didn't realize it, but Steph was starting to already have minor contractions. And as we would later find out, I guess they said Junior was already passed away for a couple of days by the time we found out. So the body was already trying to slowly but surely start pushing him out. But anyway, we were over there by about 11:30, and that first day was just long because it was just, you're sitting there, you're upset, your heart broke, but you're just kind of waiting on the delivery process. And we've had a couple of our friends come over, if I remember right. Our good friend Carla spent a good chunk of the day with us that day. I think my mom came over a couple of times. Most of my family members came that could come. I think the hardest part about that day was just waiting. And I think that night, Steph was starting to pick up on her pain a little bit. But, they decided, okay, so they put her on fentanyl and gave her a sleeping pill to help her sleep. Because it was getting pretty late at night. And they're like, alright, why don't you guys just try and get some sleep? We'll be into, the nurses are like, we'll come in and check on you every so often to see how you're dilating and how you're doing. They gave Steph the sleeping pill and the fentanyl, and she was pretty much out. I mean, I think she was kind of tossing and turning, but she was kind of like on that drug-induced sleep, and I was stuck trying to sleep on the couch. But anyway, I still remember waking up about 3:30 in the morning to Steph just practically in tears. She was in so much pain. And the nurses come in, and I forget who suggested it first. I'm not sure if Steph did or if the nurses did, but they got her to agree to an epidural. And good grief, the process you have to go through just to get an epidural. I'm not sure if Steph remembers, but there was like 5 doctors and nurse trying to read this legal form to her with her like hunched over in pain. And it was like, to me, that epidural was like sort of a surgery. They had to bring in like the special machine and this lamp. And like, she just needs a needle in her, and you're acting like it's a surgery. But again, I'm a guy. I didn't really know how the epidurals work, but they ultimately got the epidural in her. I'm sitting there thinking, she's got an epidural, fentanyl, and a sleeping pill in her. Yeah, she's gonna sleep. So she finally went back to sleep, and I did too. And I'm not sure how. I think it was just pure exhaustion. It was how I wound up going to bed. And I remember she woke me up about 5:30 the following morning. A couple hours later. It was about 5:30, I think. 5:30. And I guess she said she rolled over, and she said it felt like a bubble in her had popped. And she said, honey, I think my water broke. And of course, I'm not the most intelligent guy when it comes to this stuff. And from the movies, I thought, okay, water, it's just clear. I go over, I lift up the blanket, and yeah, it's not clear. Basically, I think, according to Steph, my reaction was, I'm gonna go call the nurse. Which I did, and another strange thing too is, right as I picked up the phone to call the nurse, here comes the nurse, and I'm like, her water broke? And the nurse is like, okay, and they started to clean her up, and my mom told me, because Mom had to get up early that day for work, and she told me, call me when you guys are getting ready to deliver Junior. So I'm thinking, okay, Steph's water broke. How much more time is it going to be before Junior's here? And that's why I asked the nurse, and she's like, honey, he's already here. And I look again, and it was just because of the way Junior wound up bleeding. I guess Steph was under so much pain reliever that Junior just came out in one shot, and she didn't feel it. But I just remember looking down and kind of seeing like this red ball. I'm like, I'll let you guys clean him up. So, of course, I told the nurse, I'll let you get that. And I texted my mom and I told her, you know, Junior's here. Steph's water broke. He came out. And I also believe I texted my friend Carla, and they both actually got there about the same time. And this was just shortly before 6 in the morning. Um, Shortly before, shortly after. I really forget which one of us saw or took him first. I believe I was because they were still tending to Steph, like cleaning her up, and I think they were helping her get ready for the afterbirth. Which unfortunately I saw that part too. But just it was the first time getting ready to hold a baby that I created, although it was a stillborn. But what they did was they took like one of those pink big pan hospital tub things and they put like a blanket on the bottom of it, and I guess well, again, we covered him up later, that's right, but they actually uh, just laid him on the blanket as he was, which the only part I really regret was I really didn't get to cut the cord per se. And at the time I was just kind of squeamish and stuff, so I kind of let the doctors and the nurses do it, but that was one of my regrets, actually for both babies, was I didn't get to cut the cord. I mean, they were already gone, but just it's a symbolism I've yet to experience. But I still remember just holding him in this tub. I was just too afraid to hold him because his body was already. It wasn't really in an advanced stage of decay, but the nurses had warned me he's already been gone for a couple of days. His body is going to be very, very fragile. So, knowing that, Steph and I were both just so afraid to really hold him outside of that box. And as if I recall, I don't think we did. I'm not even sure if he ever left that box per se. But I just remember, holding Junior in this tub. I think it was just, my main emotion was just heartbreak. I just saw this beautiful baby that, just the way he was laying, you could just kind of, in a sense, even though he was done, I could still kind of feel what he probably would have felt like if he could talk to me. And the feeling I got was that he tried, but he just, whatever it was that was trying to get to him, got to him. And he couldn't win the fight. It's just one of those things that I'll never forget. I think I held him for a while. I forget what everybody was doing. If I remember right, it was the two nurses, Steph in the room, my mom, and Carla. And if I recall right, I think Carla was by herself that day. But I held Junior for a little while. And if I recall right, I cried a little bit. And then of course I let Mama hold him. I believe she was the next to hold him. And I wanted her to hold him. I mean, this was her grandson. So, and then eventually Steph got her turn and things like that. It was just it was a hard initial couple of hours. I think everybody kind of left me and Steph alone for a little bit, so we could kind of do our initial grief. And afterwards, I think just about everybody, including the nurses, came back. And we let Steph order her breakfast because it was getting to be breakfast time. This group, I forget the name of the group that came afterwards, but it was a group that would help us take pictures of us and Junior, things like that. they took some full, I guess you could say, full exposure of Junior, full exposed pictures of Junior, but those pictures are private. Um, I really don't think it. Steph and I feel the same way. We really don't think it's necessary for anybody to see him, his whole body in the shape that it was. But we decided that, the pictures of him with his blanket on him, those were fine. But, we did the pictures, and that got done and said, and we wound up having lunch, and I believe that day we had a preacher come by and bless Junior. That was later in the afternoon. We found out shortly after Gina's delivery that Steph was indicating a fever, and they were going to have to keep her overnight. But at first we were kind of worried. We didn't know what their intentions were with Junior, and they said, if you want, you can have Junior with you in the room, until you either can't handle him in the room or whatever. And we decided to have him in the room, and it was just our time to be able to be parents to Junior. I mean, even though he was no longer with us, we still kind of got to have that experience with him. We got to talk to him, and like I said, we couldn't do a whole lot with him. I mean, because of his body, I really didn't want him moved around too much. So pretty much once we got him out of his tub and then get a little nursery bed, if I recall right, that's pretty much where he stayed. And we just talked to him throughout the day, stuff like that. Just kind of really cherished our time with him. And I remember, because it was an overnight stay, that night, this is kind of got a side story too, I know I keep getting sidetracked, but earlier in the pregnancy, one of our little classes that we had at Choices had us kind of play different songs against Steph's belly to see how the baby would react. And I remember one of our songs, because I believe by then we knew it was just Junior, but I remember one time we put a speaker right up against Steph's belly, and I forget how far along we were. I know we were getting up to about 20 weeks, and Steph said she could feel some movement, not a whole lot, but some. But I played Linus and Lucy off of the Peanuts against Steph's belly, and she said she really could feel like the baby warm up and start to move. So, but I didn't want to do that for any of the other songs. So we kind of figured that Junior loved that song. So we kind of thought it'd be fitting, when her and I were done for the night, we were getting ready to lay down. I had that song still on my phone. Steph and I were getting ready to say goodnight to Junior, because he was going to stay with us in the room that night, but we were going to be asleep. So I put my phone next to Junior and I played Linus and Lucy for him. Just, like I said, it's just, he's no longer there, but at least we could kind of be a parent to him. And, of course, we went to bed, and I believe it was the next morning, they told us Steph's fever had passed, her infection seemed like it was going away, and they cleared her to go home. And we did decide to go home. I mean, they said if we wanted to stay a little longer, we could, but, by then, we were kind of anxious to get back home because we had our dogs to take care of and stuff like that, and Junior's poor body was already starting to decay. I mean, it wasn't getting bad, it's just you knew there was like some signs. I think a lot of it though, just the whole first time experience, it's hard, and it's just, you feel lost because you have to answer all these questions, you have to decide get you run an autopsy for your baby, get you one of them cremated, buried. It's tough, especially for our first time, because we just, we were dealing with the loss, and we were having to figure out all this stuff, and just honestly, I'm not sure if I was in the right capacity to even think about it. And I think one of the most heartbreaking decisions for me was, do we cremate Junior or do we bury him? And I think it was just because I just hated the thought of seeing that beautiful baby going into a crematorium. It just made me shudder. But I forget who brought it up. It was either a nurse or one of the doctors. But he said, "Well, you guys have already agreed to an autopsy." And we're like, we said, "Yes, we did." And he said, "Well, just especially with the way his body is, there's not going to be a whole lot of him left by the time the autopsy's said and done." So we thought, well, if there's really not going to be anything left, or very little left, then to us it would seem to make more sense to go ahead and cremate him. And that's what we decided to do. But anyway, and just one of the cool things about the whole experience was, I guess you can say cool, I'm not sure. The nice thing about the whole experience was we got a lot of keepsakes. The hospital gave us all of our, all of the stuff we had, like the hospital bands. We had like a little onesie that was made for them. The blankets, we kept the blankets. We used to have the very tub he was born in, but I think one day it accidentally got smashed, which I'm still kind of sad over that. But we still have, I think, almost all of the keepsakes. And just as a follow, if God forbid, if any of you ever have to go through this, just cherish that time that you have with your stillborn, because it's your time to be a parent with your baby. It's your time to be able to bond with them, and just keep everything you can keep. Whatever the hospital thinks they can get you, go ahead and keep it. I mean, we still have all of our keepsakes from our babies, or at least almost all of them. I think, unfortunately, with all the moving we had to do, we might have lost one or two little things, but for the most part, everything's still there. Anyway, that was part 2. Part 3 will be coming up, and I'll tell you a little bit about Erica's story.